1. All right, we should be live. Welcome in. If you're watching this, you're probably watching this in hindsight because this is one of those last minute sort of pop-off tutorials. I had a topic I'm working on, and I thought it'd be really fun to record it. Something I've never touched before, so I thought, showing the learning process is really exciting. It's the world streaming feature. If you've not heard of world streaming, it's similar to asset spawning in that it allows you to have more than one world inside of your world at a time. And it's commonly used to have multiple maps. So in one of the worlds that I apprenticed Euphoria on, he built a map loading system, and it has a bunch of them. So he learned it before I did, which I'm really proud of him. I'm super excited to go learn it myself now. And to do that, we're going to use a new tool that I'm going to be introducing on Monday. So it's not completely, it's going to be it's a living document. But let's go ahead and take a quick look. This is the document we're looking at. It is called All the Things. And this is a goal to have all the things listed here that are Horizon's TypeScript and Horizon World's desktop editor. And so I've got a cute little welcome page here. The tabs on the bottom have little fancy links right here. And we're going to jump to click, I think if we just type, because we know what we're looking for, but if you knew it was a Horizon API that you wanted to use or a gizmo, you could go to those sections as well. We're just going to Command F and search for world streaming. And I think we need to go to the All the Things summary page. And there it is. Okay, so we found it. We'll jump down to it. And then here you'll see there's a more details. You click on more details, and that's going to bring you to the description. It says world streaming works in combination with a gizmo. I need to get the name of it. Not even finished filling this out. Using TypeScript, you can queue the visibility of a world and turn the world off and on as needed. Please note world streaming does not support dynamics and is meant for static models. So we can't use anything dynamic. It has to be a static world, but let's go ahead and open up this Learn page. And so I'm working on adding these info links to the right, and that's kind of how it works. So here we've got our world streaming information page, and we can see looks like we got faster load time, divide a world into smaller sublevels. I am just going to skim this, but kind of you see the point though is that this is where you're going to find that information. And that's how that document is ideally going to work. And in the future, I'm going to replace the link with a link to this video. So that'll be cool too. Now that we've got this set up, we're going to go start working our way through this, which means we need to jump into Horizon. So here's the world's desktop editor. Welcome in, Deternal. Great to have you. It's Deterno, who's Deternal to be here. I don't know if that made sense, but that was good. All right, we're going to go ahead and create a new world for this test. And these worlds, when you create the new world, they don't have the name put in, so we're going to have to add the name manually, which is a little bit tough, but we'll do that. And hello! And back to Horizon! Any second now, this will load in. And then we do want to name these, because with world streaming, you have to actually create a world for each world that you want to load. And so this world will start by saying rename, Control A. This is going to be called World Streaming Test. There we go. Press save. So now I've got our World Streaming Test world. And now that we've got this built, we're going to try to stream a world in. And to do that, we're going to need some code and stuff. But I also know that we're going to need a couple other worlds. So let's go start by building those other worlds by clicking Return to Creation Home. Of course I remember you. I just saw you last night or the night before. So it's good to have you in the stream. Thanks for joining. And welcome everyone else who's joined us. Great to have you. We're going to go ahead and click New World to create another one. And this will be the first world we're going to stream in. And then we'll do a second one just to demonstrate having multiple. And yeah, give that a moment. I think while that's loading, I do want to go quickly look at this tutorial that we pulled up from the All the Things document, which is linked in the description if you just joined us. And we've got creating a world with sublevels. We need to create these sublevel worlds. So in Horizon Desktop Editor, create a new world, name one sublevel 1, on sublevel 2. Now we don't do this anymore. This is all defaults when you create a world, but it means we don't get to name it. So we'll have to rename here in a second. So they just called it sublevel 1 and sublevel 2. And let's go ahead back in here and rename this. Rename world, which we'll call Streamed World 1. I'm going to add some spaces so it's easier to read. And then Control A, Control C to copy that. Save. And then we need a thing inside the world. So let's go and pull out a shape. And we're going to pull out a cube, I think makes the most sense. Let's see. A bulb, that's interesting. Yeah, we're just going to pull out this soft cube. Nemesis of Oculus. If you know, you know. Okay, 0, 0, 0. We've got our soft cube. I moved it to the center of the world, and I want to clear the rotation. I think we're going to change the color. And so this one is going to be kind of a light blue, and we'll change the tent strength to 1. So now we can differentiate these worlds. And then with that, we could probably name this. So we'll call this Streamed World 1 Blue Cube. There we go. Press save. And then let's check the tutorial we're following again. And we can see place several pieces of recognizable geometry inside each world. We've done that with the cube. And then we need to create this sub-level. So we can see that in the objects drop down, there's a sub-level. So we'll head back into Horizon, go to the build. I guess they've changed that a little bit. We'll go ahead and grab sub-level out. There we are. And we need to provide a world ID, intervalid world ID. Oh, so we have to publish the world for this to get linked up. Sub-level type deep link. We don't know what these mean yet because we're going to need to continue reading. Welcome in, Nafis. Great to have you. Yes, it is exciting to learn new things. I am very excited about that as well. I probably will not be on later. There's a fireworks show my family and I are going to, so I'm not planning to be online tonight. But maybe Monday or Tuesday night you'll see me online. All right, so now that we got this in and we've got this sub-level, it does look like we're going to need to publish this to get a world ID, but let's keep reading the tutorial to learn more about how it says to go. In each world, create a new sub-level entity, set the type of the sub-level to exclude, and rename it to testing only. Sure, we'll try that out. So we go sub-level type exclude, and I don't know what that means. Hopefully oh, that's interesting. You must enter a valid world ID or own a collaborative app. Anything else will be ignored. Well, it doesn't seem like that's important when it's excluded. That's so interesting. Let's see if we can get more information. This informs the world that any entities that are children to this sublevel should be ignored when loading it into the parent world. This informs the world that any entities that are children to this sublevel should be ignored. Note that they still exist when you load the sublevel world directly. This allows you to add content that you can use to test sublevels in isolation without worrying about it being included in the integrated version. I'm not going to lie, I'm not fully wrapping my head around what it's saying, but we'll keep reading on to see if it starts to make more sense. Drag the default spawn point under this new sublevel entity in the hierarchy so it won't be included when you load this sublevel. Oh, okay, got it. So anything inside the group. Okay, let's test this out. So if I'm understanding this correctly, it means that if we take the spawn point and put it inside the sublevel, it's going to then say that this, I don't know if I got that inside of it. There we go. So see how it became a group when I dragged it into the sublevel? So this spawn point is now excluded. It's not a part of the sublevel is what that means to me. Okay. So if we select sublevel, we've got it set to exclude. That's quite interesting. Let's keep reading through this. Publish both worlds and be sure to turn off the setting visible to public. Okay, and then create a parent world. Create a new world called Overworld. We've already done that. We'll just go there in a second. Add the sublevel. I just want to skim ahead. Using the drop-down list, add the 2 sublevel worlds to the Overworld. So you bring in sublevel and then link the sublevels. Select a sublevel object from the hierarchy. Okay, I think this is starting to make sense. This doesn't seem too crazy, but we're just going to keep working through it one piece at a time. So we've got this blue world set up, and we're excluding the spawn point. We're then going to go publish the world as unlisted, so it can't be found. And so we're going to scroll up to visible to public is currently turned off. Can show up in searches, mute assist, turn that off. I don't think we want any of this on. It wants us to add a rating. There is nothing in here. It's for general audiences, all ages, next, okay. And it also wants tags, which is kind of insane for a, call it an adventure. This process I do not love. I'm not going to lie. I do not love this process. Comfort rating, comfortable. There we go. Like, it doesn't make sense that you have to publish a world for world streaming, but okay. It's the process. Now we're going to go ahead and hit publish. All changes to your world will be published. Heads up, not enough changes. Take some time to customize your world. Unique worlds can help drive higher engagement. Yeah, thank you. Publishing notice, any content. Okay, confirm. I was not aware that I only added a cube meta. Thanks for letting me know. Oh, they won't even let me publish it without adding more? Is that really? They really won't? Confirm? Or is this just like a publishing bug? Oh, there it goes. Okay. It was just a bug. We're good. Maybe you have to hit it twice. I'm not sure why. All right, so now we have this blue cube world published. So we should be able to go back to our other world and stream it in. Let's give that a shot. You'll note that this is different than asset spawning, and I do not recommend using asset spawning anymore as it doesn't appear to be working on mobile. We've been asking for it to get fixed for 8 months, and they just do not seem to know how to fix it, so I don't think it's going to get fixed. We are very disappointed. Okay, so here we are. We've got our world, and we now need to stream this sublevel in. So we go build, and they said pull out the sublevel object. So we'll just maybe click on that to bring it in. Okay, there it is. And we need to enter a valid world ID. And deep link seems fine. It starts as unloaded. That seems fine. World ID. Enter a valid world ID to fetch that has been published. Does it say where to get that ID? I assumed it would just create a drop-down list for us. Let's go back here. Click on the thumbnail square, select one of the sublevels from the World Picker dialog box. Oh, that's what I was expecting. You click on this thing, and then we can see the worlds that are options. So there it is, streamed world 1, blue cube. Okay, cool, and it gets the ID for us. Fantastic. All right, so now we've got this sublevel set up to spawn. So it seems like each of these gizmos links to a specific world. So if you want to have like 5 of these, you're going to have 5 of these gizmos with each link to each world. Deterno asks if Mark Zuckerberg or Meta will put hand and face tracking to the MetaQuest 3. I do not believe that they're going to add face tracking. Hand tracking is there, so that's a possibility of seeing that in Horizon, but it seems unlikely since their current focus is on mobile, which doesn't have either of those features. So unfortunately, I hate to say that, I don't think those are coming anytime soon. Click on the thumbnail square, select one of the worlds, we did that. Position the sublevel, yep, select sublevel and scene, transform position. That's fine, we're just gonna keep it at 0, 0 for now. Repeat the preceding steps for the other level. We'll do that in a minute when we wanna have 2 of these, but for now we just have the 1. Set the initial state, which we've set to unloaded. Try each of the states. So if we tried active, it should just automatically be active. Loaded, and the entities are loaded but neither active nor, so that you really want to use unloaded if you're going to have a lot of worlds, because you don't want them taking up space, but then you load them when you're ready, and then when you activate it. So if you have like a queue, you'd want to queue it up with loading it and then make it visible and then unload it when you're done and then swap in the other one. So you kind of want to preload so that they don't. That's my understanding from what Euphoria told me. As you change the states, you'll see the sublevel load and become active and unloaded. Let's try that out. Of course, it is just a blue cube, so we might not be able to see it since it's taking up the same space. But if we just change this from unloaded to loaded, do we see something appear? We do. Look at the primitive soft cube has appeared. We can see that it's in the world now, but it's just visibility turned off. Oh, it says it's on, but it's probably because the sublevel is turned off. And then if we change it to active, it should appear. There it is. Nice. It's flickering there. Flicker warning. We'll go into preview mode to see it. And look at, there's our blue cube from our other world. So we're already streaming in assets without even coding. Very nice. We'll go ahead and go back to our sublevel. We're going to change this to unloaded. And we want to create a script to load it and unload it. I'm sure this is super simple. Let's see, programmatically spawn and despawn the sublevels, get the current state of the sublevel, get the target state, activate, hide, load, pause. These are all the properties. I'm pretty sure we can kind of guess our way around this. It's part of the sublevel entity class, which is the world streaming API or module. And so if you go to your scripts dropdown, gear icon, we might not see this. Yeah, unfortunately you have to create a script first before the APIs will appear. So let's go create a new script, which we're going to call, we need some sort of manager for this. So we'll call this the load level loading manager underscore, this does need to be attached to an entity, I think. That makes sense. So we'll put it on an entity. There we go. So we got our level loading manager underscore entity. And the reason I'm thinking entity is so we get access to like player enter world and stuff and world start. So then we can pull out an empty object, which will be the entity that runs our script. So I'm going to move it to 000, which is where I like to put all my junk. We're going to name this the level loading manager. There we go. And then we can attach that script at the bottom. And now that we have a script in our world, we can go back to that gear settings icon, select API, and then turn on the world streaming API here at the bottom. You can see there's a lot that are on by default. There's others that we will maybe talk about in future videos. Go ahead and hit apply. We can then hit 3 dots, open external editor to modify the script. And I don't care for, yes, I trust the authors. I don't care for these HC dots, so we're going to delete that, enter. I'm going to delete these HC dots. And if you're not familiar, HC dots is one way of importing. I prefer to use explicit importing. I use control period and then click enter. And now we've imported components from Horizon Core, which removes the HC dots, and it's just cleaner and easier to read. All right, so with this script set up, we do need a reference to the gizmo. So on the properties definitions or properties panel, we're going to add references to these. This seems like a mistake though, so I'm actually going to change my opinion there, and we're going to go back into Horizon and create 2 new scripts. We're going to create a data file, and then we're going to have these worlds or these sublevels add themselves to the data file. So back here, we're going to create a new script called level loading manager. Well, it's really not the manager. This is a sublevel, control A. We'll call this sublevel underscore data. Sublevel underscore data. And create that script. And then we need a sublevel underscore entity, which is what gets attached to the sublevel. There we go. So now that we've got these 2 scripts set up, we'll get back to the manager once we've added all this data. We can now head back into VS Code, and here we can see the new scripts on the left. We'll start with the data file because this one's super easy. We just delete everything in it, and then we need to create something that's exported so we can use it across our scripts. So we're going to type export constant, and we're going to create a JSON bag of stuff. I like to mimic the name of the level, or the name of the data file. So this will be called sublevel underscore data, and then equals a bag of stuff or a JSON object. And then inside of here, we can put the value that we're going to export. And so you do have to declare variables above your export. So in this case, we're going to create a constant called sublevels. And so that's plural. We need to declare what it is, which is going to be a sublevel. And if you see sublevel entity appears, and it's coming from that world streaming API that we just added. And if I click enter, we now have sublevel entity. And we can read about this if you like, but basically it's just an extension on the entity class. And so entity is anything that exists inside of Horizon. So it's usually a 3D model or a gizmo, and this is a gizmo, kind of. So then the sublevel entity is, it has special properties in addition to the entity properties. So it has position rotation from entity, but then it gets sublevel features like pause and load and all that. And then we're going to make it an array, so it's multiple using square brackets, and then equals square brackets, meaning it's an empty array. So now that we have our sublevels, we can add it to our bag of stuff by typing sublevels, make sure I select the right one, and then comma. And this makes this variable accessible everywhere. And we made sure it's constant, not a let, because we don't want this to be overwritten. We want this to stay static. You can modify the contents of it, but you can't modify the variable itself. So you can't say sublevels is equal to a new empty array. It's always this original array we created. But you can modify the contents of that array. For reference, just taking 2 seconds here because I think it's a valuable thing to think about. When you're thinking about an array or a JSON object, I like to think about them as like a position on a thing. And so it's you can't say it's a new position, right? Like I can't say, oh, that sublevels is now equal to this one. Like I've created a new one, now it's this one. it's saying it's statically locked. It's always going to be this array. But you can modify the things that are inside of it. Like you can take, in this case, movies off the shelf or whatever. So hopefully that helps build some intuition around arrays and JSON objects. Okay, so now that we have this data file set up, we can then go to the sublevel entity script. We're going to do the same thing we did before, deleting the first import line and switching to explicit importing. So deleting the HC dots, hitting control period, and then enter to explicitly import component from the top. And then on the properties, we want to know what is this, this sublevel. And so we can say the name and then curly braces. And this is just a formatting that you have to kind of get used to. It takes a long time to memorize it, but then once you have it down, you can do it pretty easily. Default will be blue cube. And so what this says is it says the name is going to have a type, which is a prop type. These are the options for what can be on the properties panel of string. The default value for that string is going to be blue cube. And then on start, we can say sublevel data dot sublevels dot push self, which is this dot entity dot as a sublevel entity. Make sure to select the one from world streaming. And that's going to add this entity that's running this script to the bag of, or the data file. And then with that data file set up, we can then have as many of these as we want. So if we head back into Horizon, we have our sublevel. Let's select it. And then on the sublevel, we can attach the sublevel entity script. And this one is set to be blue cube, but theoretically in the future, we're going to duplicate this. Apparently we cannot duplicate this. Yeah, so we'll have to bring out another one manually, but we can pull out another one. And then this one could be linked to a completely different world, which we're not going to do because that could cause some problems, but well, I guess we'll select this anyway. So this is the one that we've already done. So now we have two blue cubes selected, but we can attach the script sublevel entity and then call this blue cube 2. There we go. And so now we have two of these, and we'll use the name a little bit later. We haven't started using the name, but I just wanted to have that available. The point is we have multiple sublevels. Both of them are running a copy of the script, and that tells them to add themselves to the data file. All right, I'm going to pause there and read your guys' comments because we've been going a little fast, but we're getting there. We got a hi. Hello, JT2 Chaney. Sorry if I'm butchering that. And Eternal says, I can't paint things to create. The new worlds don't support painting anymore. They support tenting. And so to change the color, you have to change the tent and then change the tent strength to 1 so that it uses the color. It is, yeah. Anyway, painting. Yeah, it doesn't work anymore. I'm sorry. They're kind of like removing those features. So most of the features that we grew up with, are gone, right? So you don't have primitives anymore, which were the paintable 3D models. You now have tri-mesh or custom model imports, and those you can only tent those or retexture them, and that really does require a computer, which is also unfortunate. Okay. So back over here, we've got this set up ready with 2 sublevels. We now need to load those sublevels in. I think at this point we should actually have a secondary sublevel. We need to go create like a red cube. So let's return to Creation Home and let's duplicate the streamed world 1, which should be easy. Just hit duplicate. Oh, look, it even lets us rename it. Sweet. So we'll change that to 2, change that to red cube, and remove the word cloned, and then press duplicate. Sweet. So that should make our life a lot easier, and then we just need to change the tent color so that it looks differently and we can differentiate the two. That is taking a moment to duplicate. Looks like it's done now, and we're on our way. Any moment. Bum, bum, bum. But I'm expecting the code is going to be very, very simple because it looks like these are just methods on the sublevel entity. So yeah, it's a sublevel entity class, easy peasy. Alrighty, here we are. We just want to change the color of our blue cube. Flashing warning there, sorry guys. Primitive soft cube should really change the size of that. We're going to change the tint color to red. Fantastic. That is red. That is not. Well, I'm having trouble selecting red. Oh my goodness, am I having trouble or what? Come on. Oh my gosh. You can't make this up. I'm going to manually type in the color red. It's just 100. Wowza, was that difficult? There we go. And then tint strength is set to 1. Now we've got our red cube. Fantastic. And this world is almost done. We do need to publish it for it to work. So we have to go through this whole thing again, which is, if Meta's watching, please make this better for world streaming, because I would like to have lots and lots of worlds that I stream, and having to go through this for all of them, not fun. Comfortable. All right, we can now hit publish. Oh, I forgot to make sure it's unlisted. Mute assist can be turned off. It is listed as unlisted. Perfect. Publish and confirm. Do I have to click the X button for this to work? Confirm. Yeah, maybe that's what it was. That's different. You just have to like close out of the warning. It's like, there's nothing interesting in here. It's not supposed to be that interesting, Meta. It's just a demonstration. All right, return to creation home. It's like, how dare you publish something that's not interesting? All right, so now back in here, we'll be able to select the red cube in our second. And we should start giving these good names now that we're getting multiple of the sub-level gizmos. Any moment now, please. There we are. So here's the blue sub-level, our first one. So I'm going to go rename this at the top and just add blue to the top. And then this one is our red sub-level, so we'll add red. And then we need to change the world that it's linked to by clicking here. We can then select the red one from the list. And now we've linked that. We can then change this to be red cube as the name. Fantastic. And these are all set up and ready for us to use in code. And so what we're going to do is we're going to select one of these to spawn in. So we'll just go to the sub-level, our VS code. And then under the level loading manager, we now have access to this data file because we export it, making it available everywhere. And here on start, we can load one of these in. So let's just try it out and see if it works as easy as I think it would be. So we're going to call sublevel data dot sublevels. To access a specific element inside of an array, use square brackets 0. So that's going to access the first item in the array. Then we know that is a sublevel. So if we hit period, you're going to see all of the options for the sublevel. And we know that activate is part of sublevel, but the rest of them are listed in that file. So we have activate, hide, load, pause, and unload. I believe we need to use load to get this thing in. Make the sublevel visible. I wonder if we just try activate. Let's just try activate and see if we can skip some of the process. But definitely loading is better, especially for more complex environments, so that it's instantly visible. Back in VS Code, we're going to try .activate and see what happens. And if we read this, it says loads the sublevel asset data if not already loaded. Okay, so it loads it if it's not loaded, so it does take care of that for us, and then makes it active, meaning it's visible. They're using some words in some of these that are from Unity. So active is a word that's used in Unity, but in Horizon we usually say it's visible and collidable. Visible and collidable is similar to active. It's not the same, but anyway, active is a Unity term that happens to be crossing over because Horizon is built on Unity. A promise that resolves when the sublevel is active. Okay, so as soon as it's done, it does return. So there's a delay here, but I don't think we're going to talk about that. I guess I'll show you just in case you really want to know. So if we create a thing called load, like a custom method called load sublevel, and then parentheses and curly braces, we can make this async by typing async in front of it. And that's going to mean that this sublevel happens, not synchronously. So it happens as it takes its time. If it needs to, it takes its time. It also runs on a separate thread, so it's not running on the main thread. We can then move this into here, and then we can say, we can now call load sublevel on world start, and then in loading the sublevel, we can utilize the fact that this activate returns a promise, and a promise is a delay. So it says, I promise I'm going to send you something after a period of time. Now it can fail, a promise can fail, and it cannot send something, but it should. So we can then write await, and we're going to await the promise to return, and when it returns, we can then type console.log, and then we can type loaded at, and then we'll use the current time using date.now to know what time did it load and how long did it take. And interestingly, we can hit Control-C, Control-V, and say started loading at, and then we can change this to be finished loading at, so we can see the amount of milliseconds between those two. Okay, Control Save, and I think that is going to do the trick. So anyway, there's a little bit of async await stuff for you. Now with that set up, and that's not required, just for reference, like that was just showing you some extra things you could do if you wanted to know when something finishes loading. Let's go ahead and hit world simulation on, and there it is. The cube has loaded in, and if we go to the console, we can see 1703. So it took from 2003 to 2000, so half a second, 551 milliseconds roughly. That's not too bad. Half a second is how long it took to load it into the world. So that's interesting. That's interesting. That's quite interesting. Because it's one cube, I'm actually shocked it took that long. So world simulation off and then on. I guess I can see that was half a second. Yeah. Let's see if the second time was half a second as well. So 13,680 to 14. Yeah, that's about half a second still. So for just this one cube, it's half a second. But we don't have to do this. So I just want to show you the simpler version as well, which is if we don't use this .load sublevel, just Control/ and then remove the await. You can do this without any delay and just do this one line of code, and that is way faster and easier. Give that a second to compile. Clear one more time to clear. There we go. And then hit world simulation on, and instantly it works. So you don't need all that extra fancy stuff. That's just there if you need to know how long it's taking for your thing to load. And we can actually improve this experience even better by using a we're going to delete all this now that we're done. We can improve this by preloading the thing. So let's say we want to create a loop called load next sublevel. And this is a loop, so we'll call it loop. And then it has no parameters. And what it's going to do is it's going to load a sublevel. But it needs to do it in such a way where it's activating the current sublevel and loading the previous sublevel. So if we hit Control-C, Control-V, let's say right here we need to change this from .activate to .load. And if we hover over load, we can see that that does preload the sublevel's assets so it can be activated later. And then if we load 0, we just need to create some variables. Sorry, I need to slow down a little bit. I'm getting a tiny bit ahead of myself, but I don't want to lose track of these thoughts. So we need to do two things here. And I should leave a comment. This is what I like to do, especially when there's so much happening, to explain what we're doing. So we need to preload the next sublevel. Okay? And then here we activate previously loaded sublevel. Okay? So now we know what we're doing. We can then, on start, create the loop. And so to create a loop, we use async.setInterval, which creates a repeating thing, an interval that it's going to happen. We use an arrow function, so parentheses, arrow to the right to curly braces. After the curly braces, we type in the delay, which we're going to set to 5 seconds, 5,000. And that's just for the demonstration. Obviously, you don't want to load worlds that quickly. That could be a problem. And then, especially if it's a lot of data inside of it, like these are just cubes, so that's why I'm not worried. And then inside the curly braces is what do we want to do on a 5-second interval, which is to load the next sublevel. And what I think is most interesting about this is that there's actually 2 steps in this, because we do need to preload here. So let's create a new preload sublevel. And I'm trying to explain my thoughts because I'm trying to think about errors, right? Like if we load and activate, this has a delay because nothing has been loaded. So we need to load before this next one happens. Control C, Alt arrow up. And then right in here, we can call preload sublevel. Okay. Let me try to explain my thoughts because I know there's a lot happening. This one's a little bit more complicated. Okay, so async set interval waits 5 seconds or 5,000 milliseconds before it actually calls the first load next sublevel. By splitting this into 2 separate methods, we can call preload sublevel beforehand. And by calling preload sublevel, that means we will be ready when the load next sublevel comes in to actually load that sublevel. So that's why we're doing that. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Now that we've got this set up, we preload the sublevel, we start the loop, then we also need variables above start is where I like to put them. And these variables are going to determine what is the current sublevel and where are we at, like what's the next one. So we need to know the current index. It's going to start at 0. And I think we might be able to get away with just current index, but because it'll be a lot easier, let's actually set current sublevel. Sublevel is going to be of type sublevel entity or undefined. So like on world start, it's undefined, but then we have to define it. And by having the current sublevel, it's going to give us a lot of extra features. So let's imagine we're running through this. I like to do chronological order. So we start the world, we call preload sublevel. So down here in preload sublevel, we need to get the current index ready to go. And so we say current sublevel equals, and then to get this, we go to this same thing that's happening right here. So we just cut this out, Control X, Control V, and then instead of 0, we want to use the current index value. So we'll type in current index, and then this is happy. We can then utilize current sublevel here. So just slowing down just for a second, we start by defining this variable, current sublevel, to be from sublevels in the data file at the current index. We do need to increase the current index, and so to do that, I'm thinking we do that somewhere else. I'm not really sure. I'm thinking we increase the current index in this loop right here. So we say current index equals current index plus 1. And you might be thinking, what about plus plus? Well, the reason I don't use plus plus when I'm increasing an index is because we need to loop back to 0 when we reach the end. And the easiest way to do that is using modulus. So if you put parentheses around this, and then modulus is the % symbol, modulus allows us to say when we reach the end of the list, go back to 0. And so that's a shorthand for what it's doing in this case. It is a little bit more complicated than that. It's really returning the remainder. It's definitely worth Googling if you're interested. I love modulus. But we can then take the sublevel data file dot sublevels and say dot length. And so this says when this current index equals the current sublevel dot length, we're going to set it to 0. So that loops it back to the beginning. Okay. And by doing it here, if we're thinking about this in a chronological order, we start preloading the sublevel on world start. So we get the current sublevel data and we call load on it, which we can now delete. Then this load next sublevel comes through, and load next sublevel is going to increase the current index so we can preload the next one. So then that's going to go preload the next sublevel because it's going to run this code down here, which then uses the next index. And then sublevel data dot sublevels is not what we're activating. We're actually going to activate the current sublevel. There it is. And so we say current sublevel dot activate. And this is upset because if we hover over it, it might be undefined. And what we can do then is use a question mark, which says if I'm undefined, don't do anything. Now there is no reason that this should be the case, but if for some reason it is undefined, this takes care of it. And so this is just type safety, making sure that we don't try to call activate on an undefined value. Now that's going to activate the previously loaded sublevel, but what we haven't done is deactivate the previous sublevel. So right here, when we're updating the current sublevel, we need to, oh, is the volume, it doesn't look low on my end. It says it's coming in at test 1, 2, around minus 10 dB. Try increasing your volume, Lexi, and let me know if you're still having issues. It should be okay. But let me know if anyone else is having that issue too. I'd be happy to try and adjust it. All right, so the problem is we need to unload the previously loaded sublevel, which right here in preload sublevel is where we could do that because we're going to immediately activate the next one, right? So if you think about the load next sublevel loop, right here we are preloading one and activating one. And at the same time, we also need to unactivate one, which I guess could happen inside of this loop too, right? So if we said current sublevel dot unload should be to deactivate. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, Lexi, I'm not sure what's happening there. Make sure to check the YouTube. Oh yeah, you said you did that. I don't know. That's so weird. Would love to hear from everyone else if the volume is okay. So if we see current sublevel.unload, we can see it despawns the sublevel's asset data. Does this work? I'm a little worried that it doesn't work because current sublevel is being set here. Yeah, the logic here is messed up. Something's wrong. Yeah, there's something wrong here. So this unload can't happen in here. And this activate is preload sublevel is setting the current sublevel. So it's going to try to activate the one that we just loaded. That's a problem. So we need to move this up. So we activate, then we preload the sublevel. And I like to keep things kind of in order. So I'm thinking we just move the index setting because these two are related down here. So we activate the current sublevel, then we change the next current sublevel. And I feel like the name of this is going to kind of mess things up. So we're updating the current sublevel to be that. We do need to deactivate the previous sublevel somehow. I guess what we could do is create another one of these current sublevel copies. So we hit Control-C, Control-V, and then call this the previous sublevel. And then previous sublevel gets set right here before we update it. So we'd say previous sublevel equals current sublevel. And so that will keep us passing that value through. And then we can call previous sublevel right here dot unload. And that should be a reference to the one prior. So, and thinking, you know, chronologically, we want to unload and then activate. That makes sense? Okay. So I'm pretty sure this works. I'm going to pause there and read back what we've done and make sure it all makes logical sense, and then we'll give it a shot. Okay, so we have the sublevel entity script, which has a value for knowing what it is. We're not currently using that value, but we could. We then have the sublevel's data file, and we're adding ourselves to it. So this is running on a sublevel. We then add it to the data file, which we have over here. The data file has an array of sublevels, and that is then able to be accessed by our level loading manager. Our level loading manager has a current index value, a current sublevel value, and a previous sublevel value. On start, we need to preload the next sublevel, which we will load 5 seconds later when we call load next sublevel. So preloading the sublevel runs first. It says previous sublevel equals current sublevel. There currently is no sublevel, so previous sublevel is still undefined, so nothing's there. Then current sublevel is set to be the current index, which is 0, so it's loading item 0 from the array. If you wanted to use a random item, you could totally change this to do math.random rather than using current index and looping through them one at a time, but for our case, we're just going to loop through them one at a time. We then do current sublevel.load to preload it into the world. It's not visible yet, but it is preloaded. Then 5 seconds later, load next sublevel runs for the first time. And when load next sublevel runs, it says previous sublevel.unload. There currently isn't a sublevel because this is the first time, so it hasn't done anything. Then current sublevel is set to activate, so it activates that first item 0. Current index is increased by 1. If it reaches the length of the list, which is 2 currently, it will go back to 0, but since 2 is not equal to 1, it stays at 1. It then calls preload sublevel again. It then sets the previous sublevel to be the current sublevel, which is the one that is actually currently active. The current sublevel is then reset to be the item at 1, so we then get the next level ready. We then load it, and then we loop that continuously. So that should work, and we should see the items flicker every 5 seconds between blue and red cubes. We'll give that a shot and see how it works. World simulation on. Go ahead and hit play. We don't, oh, there it is. The cube has appeared. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's red. And you can see, I was expecting it to be a little bit faster than that. There is a little bit of a delay there. That is interesting. I mean, wait, was there a delay that time? Yeah, there's just a hair of delay as they're turned off and on. I am kind of shocked by that because we did the preloading. We could use that await feature to count how much time that is, but it's less than half a second for sure. So that's got to be a lot better than it otherwise would be. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the case if you're going to... Oh, that one was instant, right? That one's instant. Maybe it... I don't know. That's curious. I'm not really sure. But it's definitely a lot faster than half a second, which was what we'd previously counted the time to be. And so there we have it. That is 2 sublevels loaded into the world. I think that concludes our test. So at this time, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. But yeah, I think from there you can really extrapolate upon that to build much more complicated things. Yeah, quite neat. So we're loading those in at 0, 0. Is that where we wanted to load them in? How do we determine where to load them in? That's a good question. Level loading manager. Let me see if I can answer that. Level loading manager is set to 0, 0, 0. I think they have to be placed relative inside that world. So we currently have them set to 0, 0. Do they always spawn at 0, 0, 0? Is that the question? If we go back to level loading manager and hit unload, we can see this doesn't have any properties. Load doesn't have any properties. Activate doesn't have any properties. Let's go look at that document again, the information document, and see if there's anything else in here. Follow these steps to configure the desktop editor settings. We did that. The following code demonstrates, haha, you must have at least one script to enable a module. That's funny. I put that in one of my documents last year, and they were like, are you sure we have to put this in here? Like, we can't say this. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't work. And they were like, really? It doesn't work? And I was like, yeah, somebody needs to fix it. Anyway, it's funny that they're now putting this note in. There's a saying going around right now. So if you haven't heard this, it's kind of funny. But anytime you report a bug, they're like, no, 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 that's not a bug. It's working as intended. Okay, whatever you say. So here's an example script. And we've already looked at an example, so I don't really feel like we need this, but feel free to check it out. They're using a switch here to have different cases on how they want to handle things. I like the way that we did it better, much, much better. It was a little bit complicated to set up, but I do like the way we're doing it. I don't see anything here about positioning it, so it does seem like it has to be positioned where you want it. That does seem like that's a downside, so you can't just say, I want it to appear somewhere else. Let's test it to some extent. How can we test it? Let's see. We have the sublevel entity. So if we go to right here when we're preloading the sublevel, before we hit load, we've got current sublevel here. We can then say current sublevel dot position dot set to new vec3, so we're going to create a new position, which will be at a random position between, the x value will be math.random, and we'll multiply that by, I don't know, 10, and then we'll subtract 5. That sounds insane, but what that does is it chooses a random value between -5 and +5. We can then copy that, Control-C. The y value for now is going to be at 0.5, and then the z value will also be a random number from -5 to -5. And Control Save, So if that works, we should see this move around. Let's change the speed to be 2 seconds so we get these twice as fast roughly. And give that a moment to compile. And let's see if these are moving around, because that is kind of an important piece, isn't it? All right, world simulation on. So we can see that's moved. The cube did move. Oh, okay, cool. So you just need to move the entity to wherever you want it. There's the red one, there's the blue one. It did look like it was using the previous position. I don't know if you guys caught that. Let's stop it and try it again. What I saw happen is it spawned at first at 0, 0, 0. Okay, that one was not at 0, 0. Maybe it works most of the time. Let's see if it ever stays put. Or like, that's hard to track. Man, that does seem to be working every single time. That seems pretty reliable. Seems pretty reliable to me. But there is a potential where you might want to add like an async delay, like a set timeout right here. When you're setting the position before you call load. I'm going to just quickly demonstrate this because I think just adding one frame would be much safer. So right here we would write async, let's make some space between this, async dot set timeout, parentheses, we draw an arrow function, curly braces, comma, and then one frame is roughly, what, 25 milliseconds? And then we call load after that one frame. Let's calculate one frame real quick. And why is that upset? I put that in the curly braces. Oh, because current sublevel could be undefined now that 25 milliseconds has elapsed. It says, like right here we had defined it, but here it's like, you know, it might have changed in the last 25 milliseconds. So that's why it's saying we need to add a question mark. 25 milliseconds. If we take that and multiply it by 10, we get 250. Yeah, so 40 would be 40 frames per second. So this is calculating at 40 frames per second, which we should be getting way over 40 frames per second. So this should be waiting just a hair longer than one frame. And what I expect that should do, if we leave and watch this from build mode, is we're going to see this spawning. Not at 0, 0, which I did see it do one spawn at 0, 0. So we'll go ahead and hit world simulation on, and I don't see the cubes. Oh, there's the blue cube, there's the red cube. Okay, yeah, that's working perfectly. Looks good. Red one's ready. Kind of neat. Kind of neat. That is really cool. That is really, really cool. That is, I think, just about it. There brings up a lot of questions in my mind, like, could you load multiple of the same one? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure each one of these, you'd have to have one gizmo for every single one of the world. I guess there's a question of whether or not you can move it. Let's try moving. I don't think you can move it. I'm like 99% sure you can't move these. They're just static. But in the off chance you can, we are going to remove the unloading, and instead, we're just going to go comment that out. We'll then say previous sublevel dot position. Oh man, this is not the way to do it. How am I going to demonstrate this easily? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep it the same, but we're going to move it briefly after it gets activated. So right here, we activate current sublevel. Unfortunately, this is going to then get immediately overwritten, but previous sublevel does get written. So this is that delay we were talking about right in here, where after 25 milliseconds, something could have happened. And this does have something happening right here. So it's really the previous sublevel that we want to move. And we want to move it after a larger delay. So let's copy this code here, enter, enter. And we're going to say move after 500 milliseconds. So we should see kind of maybe 750 milliseconds, 800, we'll go to 800 milliseconds. And then we're going to say previous sublevel, pretty confident this does nothing, dot position. This is just going to move the gizmo, not the, and then dot set to, oh, this is a lot of code to write. Let's just go to 0, 0. Let's just move it to 0, 0, that makes sense. So we type vec3.0 is an easy way to get the 0 vector, or the 0, 0, 0 position. All right, so what this ideally does is it spawns it in, and it moves the cube back to 0, 0, 0. But I'm pretty confident it won't do that. Instead, it's just going to move the gizmo back to 0, 0, 0, which should have no effect on the way things behave. So we're going to go ahead and turn world simulation on. Okay, there it is. And, oh, wait, what? Hold the phone. Oh my goodness gracious. Jump into preview mode. It's moving. It's moving. That should not be allowed. What? Okay. Well, this changes everything. This changes absolutely everything. Okay, so in the previous tutorial, you might remember in the asset library, public assets, go to creator Vidyuu, you can grab our over time asset. Let's see if we can move these over time and it actually looks good. Oh my gosh, I will be completely shocked. Please review the scripts. Yeah, it's fine. Somebody downvoted our overtime manager. Go and upvote, please. Fight this person who said no, thank you to free stuff. You make me sad, person who put the downvote. I cry tonight because of you. All right, now that we're done crying, overtime manager is in the world, which means we can move this over time to 0, 0, 0. So rather than setting the position to 0, 0, we can call this, which is the overtime. That's weird. Did I mention that was weird? What the heck? There it is, utility motion over time. Oh, it's just taking a second to download it from the server. That's weird. Okay. I expected that to be a lot faster. Overtime dot move to dot start parentheses. We want to apply this to the previous sublevel. Now, because this is question marked here, we therefore have to put this inside of an if statement to verify that it exists. So we have to say if previous sublevel and curly braces. Now, I should demonstrate why. So let's start by making it wrong. And if we start by typing previous sublevel here and click enter, comma, you can see in this, like, what are we filling in? It requires it to be an entity, but if you hover over previous sublevel, it says it's an entity or undefined, and that's the problem. So let's go ahead and fill out the rest of this, which we want to move to vec 3.0 just for the demo. And then the time that we want to take is going to be another 800 milliseconds. There we go. And now we get the red error, which if you hover over it, it says argument sublevel entity or undefined is not assignable to parameter of type entity. Undefined is not assignable to the type of entity. And then if we move this up here, this isn't supposed to be preload sublevel, it's supposed to be the previous sublevel. So if we verify that previous sublevel is not undefined by just saying if previous sublevel, we can then move this right into the if statement, and now it's happy because it knows that this code inside the if statement only runs if it is an actual sublevel, which means we can now delete this line of code and Shift-Alt-F. The real question is this a smooth motion? Does this look smooth? I am baffled, completely baffled right now. Let's go to Worlds, Desktop Editor, go to Console, wait for that to compile. It looks like it's finished compiling. Go ahead and hit World Simulation on, jump into preview mode, and wow. Wow. I don't think this will work for entire worlds, but I will tell you how I'm going to be using this, and I didn't think I could do this. I really thought I was just going to have to compromise and say, it doesn't work. Oh my goodness gracious. So exit camera. We're going to finish and wrap here, but I'm working on Power Wash. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you've heard of it. And Ash and I were going to use world streaming, which is why we're making this tutorial, because world streaming works. Asset spawning is broken on mobile, but world streaming isn't. So asset spawning allows you to bring something in and move it around. It can be animated, it can have a script and all that good stuff. World streaming can't have scripts, it can't have dynamics. But apparently the world itself is dynamic. Mind blown. So we're going to be putting individual cars for Power Wash in their own worlds and then moving them just like you saw those cubes. I can't believe it. I literally can't believe it. That's absurd. That is so cool. Well, anyway, we're going to wrap there. I hope this has been helpful. We've learned a new feature. If you're interested in joining us Monday morning, my time, it's Monday afternoon if you're in East Coast, we have a live stream that we're going to be doing, diving into that document that got us started. So if you weren't here for the very beginning, I'll quickly show you that right here. Where we got started was using the, that was called All the Things is the name of the document. And on the All the Things document, we were on the home page, welcome page, and we discovered world streaming from here. So if you go into the All the Things summary, you can see a summary of everything. If you hit Control F, you can search for world streaming. So if you knew about the feature but didn't know how to use it, which is what I was this morning, like before we started, I'd never used this before. We can then hit More Details, and that More Details is going to open up this page over here where we can see world streaming, and it gives us a brief description. World streaming works. I'm going to fix this description. It says world streaming works in combination with a gizmo, and we did have a gizmo. It's the sublevel gizmo with a sublevel. I guess I'm going to call it a gizmo. I know it's not technically in the gizmos, but with a sublevel, it is kind of a gizmo. Using TypeScript can be equal. Okay, cool. That fixed it up. World streaming works in combination with a sublevel gizmo. Using TypeScript, you can queue the visibility of a world and turn on the world on and off as needed. Please note, world streaming does not support dynamics and is not meant for static models. But as we just discovered, but the streamed world can be moved as one piece, i.e., if you have a singular model in the world that is streamed, you can animate it via regular motion, regular move to. And then we'd previously linked to this document, which is the one that we just read through. It's pretty good. I do want to have multiple links in here, and I don't know how to do that because I haven't set it up for that. But we have this new live stream, right? So this live stream details it kind of in more detail, in my opinion. So we'll link that in here as well. Let's go. Replace URL with site title? No. I don't know where my keyboard is. If I hit Control Enter, it should make multiple pages. Control V. I don't know what's happening here. Replace this URL with its title. I don't want to do that. I don't know why this isn't letting me change it. Double click. Oh, okay, there we are. Control Enter, Enter. Control V. There we are. And now we've got two links. And I can even add a little description and say Vidyuu : So if you're interested in the Vidyuu one, you can look at that. And then that should open up the YouTube video that we're in. All right, we won't actually play the live stream. But anyway, this is the document we're working on. It's going to help you learn, and that's the goal. Come by Monday to check that out. I think one last thing I'm going to do is share these scripts on our Google Drive. So if you're interested in the world streaming, come on over to the Google Drive. Link is in the description. Also, link for the All the Things document is in the description. And this is, today's date is the 25th year. We are in June, which is the 6th month. And the title is World Streaming. So if you want to download these scripts and use them in your world, you can do that and play with them. They're going to be uploaded right here. Let me go get those files. Right-click, Reveal in File Explorer. Open this up, select all of these values. Motion over time is already on this website, so should be good. It's in the, give that 2 seconds to load. 1 and 2, there it goes. And then under Vidyuu Assets, you'll find TypeScript utilities if you're looking to just read through how that works. I don't recommend reading it. It's a very complicated script. Woo! Okay. I apologize, that was definitely a lot faster as we kind of raced through to like learn how everything worked. But this wasn't meant to be an easy topic. This is definitely an advanced feature, but it's a really cool advanced feature. So I encourage you to try it out. My mind's still blown. I'm still in shock. I'm literally in shock. Thank you guys. I don't see any questions coming in the chat, but thanks for hanging out and checking this out. If you have any other questions, join us in Discord. Feel free to leave comments on the video, and I will see you in the next